Okay, so welcome to Grace Between Races. This is our fifth gathering, and today we have my dear friend Jimi Two Feathers with us, which is quite a gift. And we are missing our dear friend Anne Marie Modesti, who's part of the inspiration for this. She is the inspiration for this happening. So unfortunately, we lost her. She just jumped off, and I haven't been able to reach her in the last 12 minutes or so. So we are going to move forward, and she may join us at any moment and just jump right on. And yeah, honoring that she is in connection with us, whether we are seeing her, hearing her, or not. And looking forward to her response to this as well. So I'm sure she'll do a recording to respond, even if she's not able to be with us tonight. So I will introduce Grace Between Races. We are a group in which we hold space for diverse individuals and communities to come together to express, create, and heal across differences, specifically race. And we do that through raw storytelling that brings about collective healing for all beings. And in our intention to do this, we're sharing our stories with each other and how the experience of inequality between races has affected us personally and society as a whole. And we strive to facilitate an atmosphere of support to bring about this greater harmony and healing. And yay! Anne joined us! Yay!
That was like crazy.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That must have been really frustrating.
Frustrating.
Oh, I was just starting to actually hadn't done it, but to say the guidelines. So if you want to jump in and do that, I would be so honored to have you do it.
Okay, no problem. So yes, so the guideline is really this gathering is all inclusive. We need to speak from the heart about our experiences, honoring our own truth and respecting others. We should be encouraging and supportive of others, our others' truth, be mindful of time and open to receive feedback and celebrate risk taking with gratitude. So I'm sorry about the little glitch that we had just now. It's a little bit unnerving, but yeah, I'm happy to be back. And
Yeah, I'm so grateful you could make it back.
yeah, it's really sunny here. It's blazing through my window again, but so if you see shades and light,
It makes it more dynamic.
yes, yes. So yes, so that's basically it for the guideline. I just wanted to kind of speak about the the honoring our truth, and a little bit about a question that came up last time with Holly B. Um,
Shall I do the
you want,
talking stick and invite in the ancestors and all that
oh
first?
yes, you want to do that first? No
Sure.
problem. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just give me a clue when you finish, and I'll step in with it.
Sure. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fine. And
All
if
right.
we can always switch it up at times too.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we're going to use the talking stick to consecrate sacred space
Okay.
as we move into our conversation together. So I'll pass the talking stick through our electronic slide to
Yes.
Anne, and then we'll all enter into that conversation together, whether we're listening or we're speaking and sharing.
Wonderful.
And to acknowledge that Strong Oak is a local Native elder who offered teaching the walking in balance training for council practice to do reconciliation and restorative justice. And so she initiated me to use this talking stick. So Before we do that conversation, I want to invite us to get comfortable. Finding a good seat that works for you. And I'll invite in our ancestors and our guides and guardians. And as I ring this bell, I invite us to feel us calling in the ancestors of the land where we find ourselves. And where I am, it's the Pecumtuck and the Nipmunk and the Abenaki. Thank you for your teachings. Thank you for all you have offered to this land, and may we continue to learn from you as best we can. And with this next ringing of the bell, I invite you to call in your own ancestors from your background, from wherever they come from, honoring them and thanking them. And with this last bell, I invite you to invite in and welcome any guides and guardians, any benefactors, any values that you are calling into your life, whether they are spiritual or whether they're a person in your life or an animal or a place, and to breathe them into your being. And I invite you to feel the weight of your body against whatever you are sitting on, feeling your bones that support you, give you your structure, and finding your breath, breathing in, receiving your experience, and breathing out, releasing it through your bones and into the floor and into the earth. And continuing that breath of receiving and releasing. And I invite you to feel your sits bones and this place of your root that's at your perineum, and to feel your roots growing down from this base of your pelvis. These roots that penetrate the earth, feeling that penetration into our mother, the earth. As you continue to breathe in, receiving your experience, and breathe out, releasing through that root into the earth, letting go of anything you're ready to let go of. And noticing what it feels like to have those roots grounding you, penetrating into the earth. And then I invite you to then breathe in up through those roots, receiving from them and filling your gut, filling your belly with the nourishment of the earth. And if you have a womb, you can imagine filling your womb. And if you don't, you can just imagine filling your belly and nourishing yourself. And then also releasing whatever you're continuing to be ready to release through those roots into the earth. Receiving and releasing. And filling yourself, nourishing yourself with the earth. And then I invite you to bring your awareness up to your heart and notice what it feels like to be aware of your heart and the pumping blood that's moving through it, that pumps so consistently, so steadily. And to notice if you can grow roots from your heart into your belly and into that nourishment in your belly. If you can penetrate that nourishment with your own heart. And then to receive that nourishment up into your heart, to envelop it and fill it completely with that nourishment from the earth. Continuing to receive with that in-breath and also release anything on the out-breath. Releasing it down through your root into the earth.
Working with people who are different from us and their class.
And we have Sulis joining us. And then seeing if you can feel that nourishment spreading out through your whole body, through your bloodstream, from that nourished heart. And letting yourself move any way that you want to feel that nourishment going out into your periphery, filling your body, letting yourself shake out or stretch out anything that's stuck, anything that might get in the way of being present. All right. So here we are, and I'm going to put up the talking stick and pass it on to Anne.
Should we introduce everybody?
We'll do that after you share.
Okay.
So hold on a second.
Okay. Hi again, everybody. Yes, so as I was saying before, I would just like to talk a little bit about grace between races and maybe just tap on one of the questions that came up last time with Holiday. So what I wanted to say about grace between races is that you know, this question of not question, but we the introduction of the intention of raw, honest conversation. This container, this space that we holding here is for us to really feel safe to express our experiences. um, as I said before many times, is that it's not easy sometimes for us to talk about some of these issues, but if we can't speak our truth here, then we can't speak it anywhere. I mean, this is the safest place you could be. This is the reason why we hold a space, and I would like to think that sometimes, you know, it's an exchange of um, perspectives. There's no one person with all the answers here. I consider myself a wayfinder because I'm trying to find myself in the context of the whole. You know, I'm a single mom. I'm an ordinary person with responsibilities, and you know, that have my experiences and my background, but um, we are all called here to everybody's background and experiences are valid. And it's nice in this shared experience for everybody to, the holding space is for everybody to express. And if something comes up, to feel safe enough to ask a question and the dialogue. That's where the dialogue happens, and that's where solutions could come from. Is when we really get to see, you know, understand each other and listen to one another and so forth. So I just want to welcome everybody to feel safe, to really express. And if there's something that comes up, feel safe enough to really ask a question or throw it outside there, and let's see, let's play with it, you know. And it's not a lecture where somebody's standing up and, you know, just one person expressing themselves. It's a dialogue between all of us. We all have something to bring to the table. And, you know, I just want people to understand that, you know, whether the question is asked after the video on the page, or whether it's here, you know, feel free to, I'm welcoming you guys to talk. Let's talk, you know, let's communicate, you know. It's not easy with some of the topics, but if we don't talk about it, we ain't doing anything. We're not gonna get anywhere, you know. So the question that came up about Lolly B last 2 weeks was really about, you know, how could we just embrace the good part of getting together and coming as one, and enjoying the fruit of what we're trying to bring about, that oneness with everyone. Well, I mean, we live in a dualistic environment, and um, in order for us all to enjoy that, from my perspective, is we have to be able to look at the shadows, look at the things that have caused us not to have that, you know. And sometimes that's where it gets a little bit sticky, because, you know, I'm a mom, so, and you know, like, I, the examples I will give is like everyday life situations. You know, if you sweep the dust under a carpet, or you know, you push it under the couch or something, it really doesn't make the place clean. We have to bring it out and really scoop it up and get rid of it. But the way to do it, we have to look at what's there in the first place and deal with it. You know, we can't hide from it. We can't. When when I mentioned sometimes in talking, when we're seeing people being starving and people getting shot, and I don't, you know, I don't care whether you're black or you're white. When injustice is injustice, whether you're on the reserve, or whether you're in Africa and you're starving. My heart is I come from an open-hearted space, and that allows me to see the suffering in a certain way. And if things are happening and we are numb down to it, then we have to ask ourselves questions. And when we're dealing with the heart space, it encourages us to feel. And when you're coming from that feeling space, it means that when you see another person suffering, that's the motivating factor that would cause us to make some kind of change, or to stir us to do some kind of action. Otherwise, we numb out, and that's not being human. We being just walking around in space. And I mean, we all experience pain, and sometimes in order to survive pain, we have to do it. To be quite honest, sometimes it's necessary to numb down, but that's just for a short period of time. We can't walk around as robots in society. That's not, I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think that's what we are all called here to do, is to walk around like zombies. We are called here as human beings with our feeling bodies for a reason. And for me, to exercise that right is being human. If you, right now, when I see people, whether it doesn't matter who they are, if I look at a child, I don't question. And I posted something a while ago, or maybe I intended to post something, I can't remember, but our suffering is what will bring back our humanity. Because when we see tragedy, there aren't anybody standing around and saying, well, you're black, or I'm white, or I'm Chinese. And we don't ask questions like that. When you see suffering, you go in there and you get dirty. You help people. That's it. This thing here that we walking around with is just a temporary little thing. And then when that dies, or when we stop breathing, this goes back on the worms in the ground, or the fire burn it, or whatever way we go, it just goes. This what we're fighting about is empty. So that's just my little saying for now. And I just want everybody to feel comfortable and enjoy the space, and feel comfortable to ask your questions. Bring your question, whether now or afterwards. It's perfect. There's no time factor. And let's have, some lightness with it, and trust. Put our trust in something higher than our higher selves, just come from the heart. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. So I'm going to invite us to go around now and to say our names and to state our intention in as few words as possible. So I'll start. My name is Hillary, and my intention is to learn how to be welcoming more and more. And we'll just go popcorn.
And my name is Anne Marie, and I'm sitting here with forgiveness and trust.
I'm Stephanie. My intention is to be with my heart.
Hi, I'm Sulis. My intention is to learn how I can help and be more present.
I'm Jerry. I'm here with my kitty Rosie, and we're here to listen and to learn and to feel.
My name is Jimmy, and I'm here because, well, Hillary got me here. I am, my intention is to learn.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes.
My name is Dale. I just have a few minutes. I'm going to work, and I want to connect with you all and honor what you're doing, and just tune in. And I'm in awe of what you're doing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Bonnie, excuse me, and I'm here to listen to what is offered and reflect on that and see what other experiences people around me have that they're not telling me in other times when we're connecting, plus people I don't know here. So I can know them better and know who the allies are and figure out how to connect other people that are not connecting us.
Beautiful.
My name is Kevin. I'm here to receive.
Thank you all. So, I am really excited and thrilled to introduce Jimi Two Feathers, who has become quite a close friend recently. And yeah, I felt very close to him right when I met him, which was a couple years ago at Dance New England. And I don't even know if he remembers that, but he was leading a workshop on racism in a mostly very, very white space. And he's been going into pretty much all mostly white spaces for a long time and doing that work. And yeah, for 50 years or so, maybe more. And so, you know, you can read his very impressive bio on the event, and some of the things that he has done is, you know, he's been doing racial justice and activism work since 1970, and he was a co-founder of Dance New England, and he's also been a co-founder of Earth Drum Council and been deeply involved in dance community and the Earth Spirit pagan community as well, and doing anti-racism work and workshops around privilege and race in these communities for many decades, and has been holding that staff and really doing the work of showing up in his fullness and in his vulnerability and helping others to do that. And I've had the blessing to be able to witness that and learn from him, and to collaborate now on this retreat that we're doing, this gender reconciliation retreat coming up in about a month, and to share the experience at the Parliament of World Religions and how powerful that was to do that together. So I also want to acknowledge that has done much of this collaboration with his late wife, Jimi Two Feathers, and or I don't know if they're actually married partners, so he'll let us know. And I never had a chance to meet her, and I do feel like I'm getting to know her spirit through his stories and through videos, and just a sense of what it feels like to be collaborating with you, Jimi, and the grace that I'm experiencing in our connection. And I feel deeply honored by you and by Morwen and the spirit of your partnership. So I invite Morwen, I guess she is speaking through you too, but Jimi, to share anything that you feel called to share. And specifically, he mentioned he wanted to talk about how doing the race work has led him into doing the gender reconciliation work, and and I can only assume that has a lot to do with your relationship with Morwen, and you've spoken to that before. So I'm looking forward to hearing more of anything you want to share with us.
Wow, I want to honor my elders. I have 3 elders that were men that mentored me. Horace Selden, who was the founder of Community Change. He was a Boston College professor that spent 50 years teaching about race and privilege. I want to honor Baba Olatunji, who was a grandfather of the drum, who brought the drum to America in the 50s with a lot of issues around who could play the drum. And Medicine Story, my Wampanoag elder, who brought me into the Sweat Lodge and taught me a lot of our traditions that were hidden from me. I'm from Cambridge, Massachusetts. I live in Concord now, and I'm a chameleon. And what I mean by that is I get along with police. I get along with guys in pickup trucks and flannel shirts, and I get along with Grateful Dead hippies. And I weave myself to find myself going into places where I normally wouldn't go. Like during the Iraq conflicts, I went into bars where the American flag was flying over to ask people what they thought about what we were doing. My main motto is push all the buttons, put all your cards on the table, as my elders have taught me, because then you get to see who isn't putting the cards on the table. And my native elders now have given me a nickname, he who speaks and dances with elephants, because I am always the person that brings up the elephants in the room. And so I dance with them in joy. And learning to teach people not to shoot the messenger, because by shooting the messenger, you're not dealing with the message. And, you know, that's, so I've always been on the edge, and I've always been a person of color in a white world. And until recently, I would forget that a lot. But this guy that some people call president, he has really brought that forward to the point now where I don't feel safe going out of Massachusetts, pretty much. And I'm somebody who's traveled all over the country and found myself in places where you would never think I should go or be. But I feel now that a lot of energies have been empowered to bring out some of the worst in us. And I hope that by going through this fire, that we will get some cleansing, because, you know, enough people will be fed up and say enough is enough. So when I was growing up, I'm of mixed race. I'm part English because the sun used to never set. I'm part Native American. My tribe affiliation is Wampanoag, Mashpee clan, and African. And unlike roots, most of us African Americans have no idea where we came from, because families were separated and we were property. And that was intentional to break us down. But my great-great-great-grandmother, she lived in Virginia in the South, and then she was a slave, and she married her master. And they were promptly run out of the South. They came north, and the only place in the North they were accepted, because you may, as you know, I mean, Boston's a great city, but it's one of the most racist cities in the country. They came out to the reservation, you know, outside of the Cape, and they were accepted as a mixed race couple by the Native people. And after the Civil War, they went back and rebuilt the plantation and rebuilt the properties. And he died, and he willed the property to her. And the state of Virginia was not going to allow a black person, let alone a black woman, to have all that wealth and power. So she had to leave, and she came back to Massachusetts, where she had made a home and married a Native man. And so that's how that lineage has gotten through. Somewhere around on her 94th or 5th birthday, she got word from lawyers that she won the case against the state and got the title of the property in the family name, and died 2 weeks after that. We all believe that she was just holding on because she was not going to let go of that. And once that was accomplished, there was no more purpose for her to be on the planet, so she left. So I've been very, very fortunate. It's hard to say. I mean, people are recording. My friend is going to start videoing me because I've been a sound man. I ended up going on tour with the Eagles and Sly and the Family Stone. I've flown planes, real planes, driven trucks, driven buses through rivers in Mexico. I mean, you name it. Painted houses, swabbed floors. I went to college to be a nurse and an elementary school teacher, and it didn't last because my first assignment was in Uville Hospital, which is a chronic case hospital, and then from there I went to the emergency room in Cambridge City, and from there I went somewhere else. It was a little crazy, but I wanted to be a teacher in a hospital. That was my original reason. And it's funny, I went to Boston College, and Horace Seldon, who was the founder of CCI, was a professor there. Not when I was there. He taught race and privilege class at Boston College for 50 years. And then my other mentor is Howard Zinn, who has taught me a whole about history. And he was the one that has taught me that every major event in American history is a lie. If you want to know the rest of the story, you have to find the defeated ones, because the people who win get to write what happened. You know, and I've been the activist to the activists. I've also been a musician. I play drums. My wife is an incredible drummer. And we started Earth Drum Council because I wanted to empower and make it safe for women to drum. And I met and hooked up with Bright Hawk and Imani and real strong drummers. And what I learned out of that is sometimes estrogen, too much of it is just as bad as too much testosterone. But we have to go back and forth with that. And so I wanted to empower women to drum. So this race and justice work, it's always been kind of entwined with gender work. I just didn't always know it. But then after that, I wanted to make it safe for men to dance. Because as a drummer, what I've learned is the best drummers are dancers. People who don't dance cannot play the drum. They know all the parts, but it's just not in their body. So that's why I want to get men to dance, because I want them to feel that rhythm in their heart and open up. And the thing about drumming is also very subversive, because Baba Olatunji, he said, I want to drum in every house and there would be world peace. And the piece about that is when you connect with the drum, it is very primal. All of the churches and the nightclubs and the theme parks, they're all trying to copy that primal essence of drumming, dancing, singing around a fire. So my church is drumming, dancing, and singing around a fire. And people get to testify by coming forward and playing a song, telling a story, or playing some music. So there's that primal piece, and that's why there are only two reactions to the drum. People are drawn to it, or they're terrified by it, and they can't get away from it fast enough. And we believe that is because deep down inside as humans, we realize if we connect with that, it's going to change us. Because every one of you is a drummer. We all breathe in rhythm, we have a heartbeat, and we walk in rhythm. Anyone who tells me they don't have rhythm, I ask them what planet they're from. But all of us humans have that in us. And it's that primal connection. I've been drumming and dancing around fires for decades, and I'm not tired. I've never gotten bored of it, not once. Because every time is new and different and powerful and beautiful to see people transform. So as I was getting older and going through life, and I saw all of the discrepancies in our cultures, in our systems, I wanted to challenge them by asking the hard questions, the questions that a lot of people have trouble with. And I still do that. When people ask me, Jimmy, what's your take on a cultural appropriation? I said, well, you're not going to like it, because you're going to be really surprised in what I believe. I don't believe there is such a thing as cultural appropriation, because in the arts, everything is a copy. There are no new ideas. Whenever you hear somebody talking about a famous musician or artist and say, well, who inspired you? You know, and really between the lines and say, well, who'd you copy from? So it's a real tough, it's a black hole in a way. It's a vortex, but it's good for discussion to get people up. But I don't really believe it. The only time there's cultural appropriation is when somebody does something and they don't give credit to where it came from and where they were taught. But they have a right, because all of the people that have taught me the traditions that they've taught me have done it openly and wanted to spread it. Baba wanted to spread the African rhythms. When he came here in the 50s, we were doing the Black Power thing. We were modern African men and women, and we wore a suit and tie, and we didn't do that barefoot jungle buddy grass skirt thing in the jungle. And Baba wanted to teach us, and we turned away from him. Not me, but our people did. So he was a teacher. So he taught white people how to drum. And a lot of the rhythms that we have today would have been lost if it wasn't for him and his work in teaching. And then, of course, in many traditions, women don't drum. But that's a lie, too, because Lane Redmond wrote a book when all the drummers were women. And one of my teachers, Yaya Diallo, he told me a story that, drumming is like a personal thing. It's your voice. So whenever you hear somebody drumming, if you're drumming, you say, oh, that's so-and-so. Oh, I know who that is. So his mother on her deathbed told him, I'm going to tell you something now. She said, I'm the secret chief of the women drummers. And because they say, oh, that's what that is. Or they would hear drummers out in the jungle and they say, whoa, who's that? We don't recognize that. And the women, when the men were drumming, the women were listening and trying to memorize the rhythms. And then they would go off out in the jungle on their own and drum. So there have always been women drummers. It's just been a little bit, under the table. And it's so, when I met my wife, Morwen, and she was a flute player and a singer, but she didn't play the drum. She took the drum, took it up. She got better than I did. She was really good. It's just like, but part of the reason why she was so good is because she was given the space and the respect to learn. She wasn't getting nipped at and pulled down. I used to go to the fire circles at rainbow gatherings, and I'd see a young woman bring a drum down to the fire, and what I call a djembe rooster, some guy that, with no shirt on, come up to it, hey sister, nice drum, and take the drum out of her hand and start playing it. I'm going, well, who is she? Was she just drum carrier? And that really bothered me. So I started going against a lot of the traditional cultures, the Afro-Cuban, the Africans, where they said, oh, women don't drum. And when the drummers, teachers came over to teach people, as a woman, they would take your money in class and then ignore you. We got into a lot of trouble because we would not hire people like that. We would not hire men that wouldn't respect the women. And I say, we got in trouble for it because they say, hey, you're not going to hire this master? I said, no, because he's a horrible person. He doesn't treat the women right. He just wants the money. Now things have changed, and I see a lot of women drumming. So I feel like, okay, what's next? So then, as time goes on, and Morwen got brain cancer, and they gave her 2 years to live, and she lived for 5. And when she went out like a switch. She had no pain or anything. She was doing really good. She was an amazing writer. A lot of who I am is because of her. So anyway, it's like, well, what do I do? Because we developed the whole process of deep listening. We worked with Palestinians and Jews together in a circle, black and white. We had some native elders in the first council with white people ever. And it's like, I've always worked as a partner. And it's like, gee, what do I do? So Amani went with me, took Morwen's ticket because Morwen wanted me to go to the parliament to meet the native elders, to meet the women from the 6 tribes. And I said, okay, I'll go. And so I ended up going, and I ended up going with Amani, and that was great. And it changed my life. I kept bumping into Hillary. There's 8,300 people at this event, and I kept bumping into her, and I knew, I said, there's something, it was an intuitive thing. I said, I'm going to talk to her, and I want to find out who she is. I don't know why. There's something in my head. It's just like, who is this person? Why do they keep showing up? Why do they keep showing up in my head? And then I see her. I was like, there's all these people. I'll be looking for people, but you turn around and there's Hillary. So I asked her, I said, hey, I'm looking for, somebody to be a partner to work with in this work this way. And she's like, oh, I'm so honored. And I'm thinking, what? No, I'm honored, because it's an intuitive thing. And then I find out all the skills that she has. It's like, wow, man, she's going to teach me stuff. I'm going to teach her stuff. She's already down the road. It's great. Let's just go. Boom. And thank you for trusting and putting up with, me, like, when I got it, it's different, but it's the same. It's like sometimes you meet somebody and there's the connection, and a lot of times you don't follow it through. You're embarrassed, or it's like, oh, it's just in my head. But I've learned, no, follow your heart, follow your head and spirit, because your spirit knows more about what you need and what you want than you do. And it's always a struggle. It's like, how many times have all of us here not listened to our intuition and paid for it? Is there anybody here who hasn't had that experience? See? And a lot of times I have to learn that my first hit on something is the most genuine, and it goes downhill from there. The first time I speak something or write something, it's at the best. And if I try to, tame it out, or somebody says, that was great, can you write that down, or can you say that again? I said, no, I did it. That was it. You heard it. I'm trying to learn how to recapture those moments and reproduce them. But it's been a joy to do this work and to see the results of it, even though it's hard, even though a lot of the facilitation that I've done, there were many, many years where I would facilitate council, but I couldn't speak. Because I believe as a facilitator, you're holding the container. And if you speak on any opinion, then you're gonna look like you're on a side. And I really want to try to present as neutral as I can to create as safe a space for people to come out, to be their authentic self. To stop speaking from here and to speak from here. And I learned, my eldest says, how do you know when you're speaking from your heart? It's real simple. It's coming out of your mouth and you're hearing it for the first time along with everyone else. And that's, as adults, it's really hard for us because we want to rehearse and we want our words to come out right. But actually the best words that come out are the ones that you're not thinking about. It's just being your true self. So that has paid off tremendously for me. And at the same time, I wanted to be able to sit in council and speak my truth of mostly of what I've observed, because I'm a serious people watcher. My favorite place to watch people used to be Harvard Square or the Nitty's Corner. You could be there for a half hour and you would see all kinds of people from all walks of life, and I would like to walk up to somebody and say, oh, you look kind of interesting. Can you tell me something about yourself? And of course they look at me like, who are you? Get out of here. But, oh man, I really just want to make that connection. When I was at the Parliament, there was something else, a little game I play with people. I look you people in the eye. I try to always look people in the eye when I'm coming across, just even walking down the sidewalk. And I noticed after a while that people who have much lighter skin or much darker skin than I are the hardest challenges for me to meet eye to eye. When I was at the Parliament, I didn't experience that at all, not once. Everybody was open. Everybody was welcoming. The energy was so powerful. It changed me so that I realized, okay, I know what my next piece of work is. I've been doing this social justice work. I was on the board of Community Change for 15 years, and I helped steer that organization to solvency. And now they have their budget is in the black now for the first time, and they're doing great. But at the same time, and this is a little bit of a tangent, I want to express this. The racism that is in this country, this is an example of how systemic it is. We always, my philosophy at Community Change is it's a white problem. And being a racist, a black person can be a bigot. They can be a wrong or bad person. They can't be a racist because by definition, it's you're coming from a place of power. So we always had a white man as our executive director to interface with the people in power. And we would have two co-chairs, which I always try to break it up, male and a female, to present those energies. And then Paul Marcus, who was our executive director for many years, but he wasn't really an ED. He was an activist, and he was a good teacher. When he stepped down, we had to get a new executive director. We interviewed 35 people, 2 men and 33 women, because men don't go after those jobs because they don't pay as much, right? Again, that's another disparity between the sexes. We met this woman, Shea Boulay, from Maine. She has a blog called A Black Girl in Maine, and she is amazing. She cuts right through everything. We hired her, and we took her around Boston to meet all of the other social justice organizations and the networks. And Haymarket Fund had just hired Cordina Hill, who was also an African-American woman who was now in charge. When they compared notes, what we found out was both Community Change and Haymarket funding from our long-term funders dropped 15% because a black woman was in charge. This is within the anti-racist community. That's how systemic it is. When people ask, you want to know how systemic? Well, this is my experience of that. Spending several weeks on the phone calling the funders up saying, hey, is something wrong? Did we do something wrong? What's up? And it was always kind of like, well, we give him money for these many years and we think it's time to pass it on and change it up. No one was honest. Not one person was honest about why. We have now used that and leveraged that perspective to teach people this is how systemic it is in the community. The other piece was I was embedded in the Occupy Boston movement. I really felt good about it. Here's maybe the last chance in my lifetime that we can have a movement and do something. Well, I was embedded, and what I mean by that is I could not tell them that I was a representative observing from Community Change because even a nonprofit was suspect within those young people. Now, when we do rainbow gatherings, we do them from scratch, we plan them a year ahead. But the Occupy movement was a copy in Boston of what was going on in Washington. Somebody sent a tweet out, said, hey, let's all go down to the financial district and occupy. And they had no real plan for how they were going to survive or how they were going to be there, but they were there. When I got down there, I asked, say, who's in charge? And they would say, oh, there's nobody in charge here. We're all equal. I say, well, who's washing the dishes and who's cooking the food and who's cleaning up? Oh, those people over there. And so that's where I went. What we learned out of the Occupy movement is the kids that wanted to go down there and make a change, because they knew nothing else, they actually created the exact structures of sexism and racism that they came from, right within Occupy. And there was a man there who did the town meetings. He was Hispanic, but he was very light skinned. And he was one of the facilitators, along with many others. And we did what we call a power analysis at the end of Occupy, which is not the top leadership, but the people who are doing all the work. And we brought them together and we spent a whole day doing exercises with them, showing the analysis of the power structure, who was in control. And what we found out is Occupy Boston was funded by the 1%. And the 1% was these 2 guys that had all the money and bought all the laptops and a lot of the equipment. And then when they did the regional gatherings and they got on the bus, they picked who they wanted to go with, and then they would take a few of the random folks that were the rest of the community. And we showed them that this is what happened. And we don't blame you, it's because this is all these kids knew. was to create the exact structures that they were running from, with a power structure where women did a lot of the work, but they didn't really have the representation as leaders. The people of color came to the Dewey Square, and the white kids, they didn't know what to do with them, so they weren't really connected. And when Mayor Menino told them they had to clean the place up, they cleaned it all up and they put all the trash in this corner over here. And that corner happened to be the corner where all the black folks hung out. But because they were disconnected, the white kids didn't know that's where all the black folks hang out because they didn't hang out with them. So of course, hey, what's that space? Oh, we don't use that space. Let's put all the trash there. So I was sitting in the POC tent one night, and I did one of my push my buttons, talk about the elephants in the room, because the bros were all complaining about the Occupy Goon Squad. Mayor Menino had let 2 vans off of people from mental institutions and said, hey, these folks will feed you and take care of you. And that's a strategy to break down a system. I mean, if you're an activist, you probably, you understand that. You let some really bad people in and they'll break down the system. So these guys are sitting in the tent complaining about, hey, we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, we hear the security holding down a black guy on the ground. Well, the black guy was a drug addict or a racist or a real violent person. It had to be apprehended. But then I opened my mouth and I said, so hey, let me ask them, how do you think the next time that happened and there was a bad person out there, no matter what color he was, how would it look if there was the security people were mixed with some black guys and some white guys? Okay, wouldn't that look a little different? And they were like, it got real quiet, and I was like, uh-oh, maybe I said too much. And then this woman spoke up and she said, that guy there, meaning me, said, that's the first smart thing I've heard anybody say all day. So what are you all going to do about it? And they all jumped up and they ran out to volunteer. And I said to her, what just happened? What'd you do? Said, well, yeah, you're right. Somebody was getting ready to cut you, but they're all trying to get in my pants, and I know how to manipulate it. So they're all trying to please her. So they all jump up and run out and volunteer for the security. And now there's some big black guys along with the white guys doing security. So that was an eye opener for me. I learned a lot in those weeks of being a part of the Occupy movement. I learned within the POC, we created a definition of what it is to be a person of color. And we kept having well-intentioned young white boys come who wanted to hang out with us. And they would say things like, well, I don't like hanging out with my own folks. I like hanging out with black folk, and I'd have to say to the brothers, hey, no, sit down, don't eat him. No, he doesn't mean bad. And I talked to the kid and I'd say, listen, as I support spaces where only women need to be because they need to work out their stuff, this is a chance, one of the first times in my life I had a chance to just be with people of color to work out our stuff, colorization and class and all the stuff that we have within our own cultures and our own people. And he says, yeah, but why can't we just all be together? I said, I really, really hope one day we can, but right now we need this space. We need to be here with each other to work out our own stuff. And I felt bad, but I also felt like we're not there yet. And these folks are sitting together with some of the people of color that are educated, with some people from poor neighborhoods, conversing for the first time and talking about their ills, and being able to witness it and experience that was really powerful. And to talk about colorization, because within our own people, growing up, I had a real hard time because I wasn't dark enough to be with the African Americans, and I wasn't light enough to be with the white folks. So I walked on the fence and I was getting stones thrown at me from all sides. And my family was one of the first black families in the neighborhood at that time in North Cambridge, which was mostly Italian and had integrated really well with the Italians. But then when other black families started moving into the neighborhood, we were Uncle Tom's because we got along with the white folks. But we were the first black family there. So, you know, what else were we going to do? You know, so what did we do? We moved to Bedford, Mass when I went to go to high school. And we were one of two black families in Bedford, Mass. And high school was really interesting, but I managed to get through it really well because right next to Bedford is Hanscom Field. And I ended up hanging out with all of the kids from Hanscom Field because their parents are in the Air Force and they're from all over the country, of all races and all colors. And so that back then, that community was really pretty well integrated. So I found, you know, that's where I could just be myself and be with people and not have to judge what color they were, because for me, it really wasn't about, you know, being any color. I just wanted to hang out with whoever I thought was interesting or whoever would want to hang out with me. And I didn't really see that barrier, even though I remember playing with toys and listening to the news when Martin Luther King got killed, and remember all of those moments. And never had been down south. My cousins would come up down south and tell us stories about what it was like being there, and I just couldn't imagine it because I lived in Cambridge. But looking back now, the racism that was there was there. I just wasn't aware of it, and I wasn't aware of it in the same way. I just looked at people as like, that person doesn't like me, not because of his color, because he just doesn't like me. I really didn't compute because of the way I grew up. And it wasn't until I was 18 years old that I had any idea that I had Native American blood. And that's because when you're a race that's on the bottom, whatever the group is, people always try to find a group that's lower than them so they can feel better. So for the black folk in Cambridge, worse than being black was being an Indian, because Indians were wild people and blacks were slaves, property. But that we figure, well, that was at least we're not on the bottom, so to speak, the totem pole. So every race has to have somebody down to put them down below them so they don't feel like they're on the bottom. And so my aunt said, I'm going to tell you something about our family that no one else is going to tell you, and I'm going to tell you because you're going to take it forward and you'll do something. My aunt told me that we had a lot of Native American blood, as most African Americans are mixed with West Indian and African, just in this part of the country that came here. And she told us that, and then I did some research and found out that one of my ancestors actually is Pocahontas. So it's a crazy world. My aunt, and thinking about it, and my aunt was the one that really set me on my path to find out what the rest of the story was. You know, I was the kid that always wanted to figure if I could look behind the curtain fast enough, I'd see what was really there. And it was always like, hey, you know, is there a tree? You know, does the tree make a sound in the forest if there's nobody there to hear it? You know, it was that kind of thing. So I've always taken that now, and now I look at what's going on that nobody's talking about, and I want to speak it. I want to bring it forward, because part of that is if we don't, you know, life is short. So let's just get it out there. Let's talk. Let's get it all out now. I'm 68 years old and I'm still finding new things to learn, and new people to talk with, and new challenges. So I look at what's going on in this country now as an ultimate challenge that is going to break the logjam that we've been in of hiding, of, you know, pretending. But now the reality of it is, though, people start talking about reparations. I don't think anybody realizes what that really means, how much the people who have are going to have to give up to the people who don't have. And that's scary, because I don't think this culture is anywhere near ready for that. I mean, if we look at what's going on with the border right now and the situation that's been created there, but it's covered up, and You know, I'm not afraid of that guy. What scares me is all the people who drank his Kool-Aid and they're still on it. They're still on it. Last year at Fairy Fest, my other life, I'm a troll, a real troll with fangs and makeup and mud all over me. And I'm part of a clan of trolls. And we go to this place in New York and we do Fairy Fest. And it's a little tiny town in New York. And you go into the diner and it has Trump for president and Hillary for jail. It was that kind of, but they liked us because we brought more money into town in that 1 week than they see in their taxes for the whole year. So they put up with us. And I went in there this last year and the place was crowded, jammed. And I said, what's going on? They said, oh, we're closing down. I said, why? I said, because of the new laws, labor laws stuff, we can't afford the health insurance for our employees. And that was something that Trump put into place. And I said, oh, really? How did that happen? And these folks are still in denial. They're still like, rah, rah, rah. Because what I don't understand is how can so many people vote against their own best interest? Is our country been dumbed down that much? Are we that distracted? So that's why I think now as an activist, it's really about finding ways to gently educate people without making them feel bad. Like when people tell me, oh, immigrants steal jobs. I say, really? I took a course recently. My last Microsoft course was how to take a Microsoft Surface apart. You all know what a Surface is, right? It's the Microsoft laptop. Well, here's the thing. The two tools that you need to take a Microsoft Surface apart are a putty knife and a heat gun. I'm not kidding. And then once you do take it apart, you need a soldering gun because there isn't a single plug or switch or screw in the whole device. And that's because there wasn't a human hand that touched it when they built it. It was all done by robots. That's who's taking the jobs. I tell them, we lost 16,000 jobs so you could go through the toll booth 10 minutes faster. What happened to all those people? So when you start speaking like that, if I can do that and I just get a little bit in where get the person to start thinking, because I don't understand that what we're going through right now is the biggest shell game in history, right in front of our eyes. Anybody with any kind of common sense, oh, I'm sorry, that's not common anymore. We need a new term. But anybody with any sense, like all of the elderly people, Medicare is going to go away. Where is that going to put us? All of these pieces are happening at once. Meanwhile, the climate's changing, and like I said earlier to Hillary, I said, every time somebody speaks against climate change, I want to know who they work for. I want their full disclosure. Tell me who you work for, because that's the piece that we're not talking about. Same with the reparations. So anyway, I'm just, that's just the tip of the iceberg for me, I guess. I went all over the place. But getting back to the parliament, the first day, Hillary, was really amazing. Every day was amazing, but the first day was all about the women. It was the Women's Day. And all of these women got up from different countries, and I don't remember the names. I remember one woman who was interceding in child brides, and how she was doing it was going and meeting the men and reading the Koran to them, reading the part of the Koran that says that a woman has a right to choose her partner. And okay, that's not, but wow, that woman's really amazingly brave to be doing that kind of work and be standing here telling us about it. So the parliament was like a whole bunch of TED Talks of people who have done amazing work and amazing things. And then this interfaith minister, this woman got up and she asked the women anybody who had been sexually abused to stand up. And by definition, anything from somebody exposing themselves in a parking lot to rape and everything in between. And asked, there's 8,300 people there. I knew what her intention was, and she got all these women to stand up. And then she asked all the people who had been affected, or knew people, and been affected by somebody who had been abused, or was a partner of somebody, or as an ally, stand up. At that point, just about everybody was standing up. And I figured, all right, I knew that it was really bad in this country, that a large percent of the women in this country have been sexually abused in some way. And then I started thinking, well, if over 90% of the women in this country have been sexually abused, then my guess is there's a pretty big chunk of men that have been too, because I've been reading #Wyden Report, and I've been seeing the men telling the stories, and it's a lot harder for a man in this culture to tell a story about being sexually abused even than a woman, as hard as that is and crazy as that is. So the women on #Wyden Report were supporting these men to come out. So then I figured, well, the big takeaway from the parliament, which isn't a real big takeaway, it's just a reminder that everybody is having the same issues wherever you are. That's what it taught me. All these people from all over the world were talking about the environment and about the disparity of wealth and education and health of children. All the same issues that we have here were there. But what happened was, for me, is Morwen told me that she had never had any kind of encounter of sexual abuse in her life at all. Not even seeing somebody flashing her, something like nothing. And that hit me. I said, wow, she was an amazing woman. And that, is there some correlation there? She was never abused. So I thought, my takeaway was, imagine if we could take that number of 97% and bring it down. Imagine how much more amazing the world would be. Now, of course, I want it to go down to 0, but you got to start somewhere. And so that's why I met Hillary. That's why I'm on the path that I am now, because it's the same work. The isms are all related. Usually if somebody's a sexist, it's a good chance they got a lot of other issues that are related. So I figure whichever way that we can move forward to help heal the human race, it's in, that's my whole thing. People say, why do you do this? Is it because if I can help make the planet a better place for you, I'm also part of the planet, and I'm making it a better place for me too. And so that's why I want to do this work and expand now. It's all the same tools that really, it's just superimposed the words, the incidents, but it's the same work. It's just using a slightly different brush to paint with. They're all connected. So that's why I want to do the gender reconciliation, and that's why I want to do it right now. I want to focus mostly on male and female, because the other thing I think that we do as humans is we can make things more confusing. So the whole transsexual thing is really confusing for me. And when we set this up, we knew we were going to get pushback by transgender people. So I thought, hey, well, this model of doing the council and, fishbowl, where one group is in the middle speaking, and the other group is outside witnessing, but we could do binary and non-binary. And that way there could be men and women in either circle. And I think that would be just as powerful for those two perspectives to be able to share and do deep listening with each other.
Wow. Whew. Taking a deep breath after that. And I'm sure we all could do that and could use that, and feel so full of so much wisdom and knowing and experience. So thank you so much, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so Anne will share with us, and we'll continue our discussion, and hopefully we'll have a little time for sharing from others as well.
Okay, wonderful. So maybe we could take a few deep breaths before, we continue. And just bring our attention to the heart area. You could rest your hands on your heart if you would like. And just breathe in that area. And just feel your heartbeat. Connect with the rhythm of your heartbeat. You could just expand it as wide as it can go. Wonderful. That was marvelous, Jimmy. That was so wonderful. There's so much wisdom there and so many areas that you touched on. Um, my, you know, I think sometimes the question that's coming up for me is, do you, where do you see
And I think you need to repeat. I think there's a bandwidth.
Yeah, super slow.
With another.
And
From your years, what I'm.
Can you repeat that?
Can
We
I?
couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay, I'm asking the question from his years of experience. What were the things that he found out that was most effective in bringing people together, and the things that perhaps didn't work? So, to give us some kind of clue and in tips and insights into, stuff that he's seen that helped and what didn't help.
It goes back to being a chameleon. When I get stopped by a policeman, my challenge is to find a common thread. Now he's a policeman and he's afraid also. So I want to through my body language and my speech, I want to assure that I'm a human being and we can make a connection. And I take it as a challenge. The time that doesn't work is because I can be just in myself a lot. Sometimes that threatens people, or people will superimpose, their mommy or their daddy issues on you. And at that point, you need to not take it personal.
Right.
But at the same time, I do take it personal in the sense that what did I do? Because I didn't make that connection.
Right.
But it's what did I do or what I didn't do, but I don't necessarily blame myself and saying, well, there's something I don't know about that person. But I always look at it as, I think that you can always find a common thread. Because we're human, and always work to try to find a common thread. I don't look at, there's no us and them. There's only us. We just don't know who we all are yet.
Right. I totally agree. But it's what I'm kind of picking up is I have two sons, and there's a big part of, there's something in the Black community, and I could only speak from my experience coming from the Black community, that haven't been dealt with much, if at all. And is the fact of the mother, of the parent, the mother especially of Black boys, there's a fear that we deal with, that we live with through this whole, racism kind of culture mindset that affected, because you could call it post-traumatic stress disorder or whatever you want to call it. But having a Black son puts a lot of stress on parents of Black boys. Because, and I'm speaking from myself, kids would be kids. But when you have zero tolerance for a segment of society or Black boys or whoever that is, and that they will cross lines, they will do stuff, they're exploring. There's no leverage for that. But I have experienced my kids walking out the door to go, whether to go to school or go to the store or go wherever they go to play sports or whatever. Would they come back home?
My aunt, my grandmother would call it the talk.
Yes.
And it's the talk that is different from the talk that you do with young girls.
Yes.
And it's about talking about, to have them understand that just their presence could be threatening.
Right.
They have to be aware that as they move through the world, that just their presence, and they don't have to do anything, and that need to be aware so that when that flares up, you do not aggravate it, you don't magnify it.
Right.
And there's a balance too, because you don't cower back either.
This is it. Yes.
Right. Because if it's a bully, right, the only way to stop a bullies are cowards. And when they're outnumbered or feel overwhelmed, they stop. Right. But they feel like they can get in and push, then they keep pushing. So there's that balance where you don't want to come off to intimidate somebody, but at the same time, you don't want to encourage them.
Right.
So you have to be aware. The talk was with my aunt was about being around white women. Okay, and how that, just the appearance, that's where it sparked no red off. That the boys have to be aware of that all the time. No, it's like I said, I used to walk through the world, not in a white world, like being at dance camp and not realizing that I'm a person of color. These days, I'm on alert all the time now.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah. It's tough because as kids, I mean, they playing, they having fun. It's very easy, especially that they're not grounded so solidly within their own beingness. This is something that comes with age sometimes.
And they're innocent.
Yeah. And so sometimes, and especially not only that, they have also the influence of music and the media and all of that, I mean, plays into it. And it's tough. It's just tough to be a young person in general, but especially a young Black man, a young Black boy, and I've seen my own sons struggle with certain things, and I know my own fears, and there were times when my son left and I would be in panic, like if I call and I didn't get him or I can't hear, it was very easy for me to go into panic, and I think a lot of Black mothers suffer from this. And in our Black community, there's a shutdown, there's a numb down of dealing with issues because some of it is so traumatic and painful that we just don't deal with stuff anymore. And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's causing more chaos, because within not only put the whole racism issue aside, within the Black community itself, we have a lot of issues that's related to stress and related to mental issues, and because of numbing down, because of not being able to express, so many people are afraid to even speak their truth.
Right.
You
And
know?
then there's what happened in my family. There's what we call, and I'm just going to be frank here, the uppity nigger syndrome.
Exactly.
That as soon as, oh, you think your family's better because you know some white people, we're going to take you down.
Right. Right.
Yes.
So it's really tough. It's really a tough situation, you know. I mean, I try to talk, and that's the other thing. Would they listen? You know, you could talk, but so that's why I was saying in one of the conversation, I think it was with Kelvin, that I try to live my life as an example now, you know, because I find like sometimes talking gets in the way, like it doesn't really do much. So I try to live my life as an example, you know, and it's not perfect. I'm not perfect. You know, but I'm trying the best that I can. But I know what I see, and I see the struggles, and I would love to help. And wherever I can, I try. You know?
It's a thing I call controlled burn. And the best example is when my oldest boy was growing up, we lived with a wood stove. And when he was a baby, he went to touch the stove. And his mother was like, no. I said, no, let him burn himself. I would rather have him just burn his finger than plant his face in the stove.
Right.
So both of my boys had controlled burns where we had to talk, and then they had a run in. And nothing happened, but it was enough of a burn to show them, look, you don't have to be doing anything wrong.
Right.
It can happen just like that.
Just
And
like that.
experienced that, and they came back to me and they said, oh, Dad, is this what you mean? I said, yeah, and you have to be aware of this all the time. You know, and you know, my boys are light-skinned, and both of them are, you know, have white girlfriends. Okay, and just walking down the street, if you're in the wrong place, you know, and even people who are tolerant. There was a place called God's Valley that we went through going across country one time for Rainbow, and they asked us to stop there and be there. And it's a long story, so I won't, but the leader had a medicine story, and I sit down at the table, and he said, you know, we accept all people here, all colors, the red man, the white man, black, but the black must be with the black, and the white with the white, and the red, you know. And so that's like, okay, so what are you saying to us, you know? And he says, oh, well, you know that little black boy that you have on the bus with you, but tell him to stop hanging on the white girl, because we're going to have the guys from town come in for the party, and they won't like that, you know? And I said, well, you're saying God's Valley and you accept all, but he said, yeah, you know, equal but separate. So, and yeah, it's hard for young black boys. And that's why, you know, so many of them have grown up without fathers.
And so many of them have become self-hatred to the point of killing one another now. So, I mean, it all boils down to, you know, this plane, when babies come in, we're supposed to receive them. And when these boys come and we make them feel like they're not welcome, or anybody feel like they're not welcome here, it's a tough card. It's a tough card, because when people feel like they're not wanted or they're not good enough, it plays off in their mental state, and we know how this turns out later on. You know, there are few people who were able to go through these kind of stuff and still excel, but those are little specks here and there. We want to tap into much more of the ball of it, because these kids are all so talented. They have so much to bring.
You know, one thing I didn't mention that is important. You know, I always thought growing up, I always thought the women were in charge. In my family, the strong people were the women. They ran everything. It wasn't until I got out in the world that wow, that's not how it is. Because in my family, the women were in charge.
Right.
And that was it. And in a lot of families of color, that's because the man is diminished a lot more and threatened a lot more in various ways than the women. But my family, the women were strong and the men were very passive. And it wasn't until I got out into college that I thought the world was upside down.
Right.
Like, wow, it's so different.
But that also brings a lot of burden because, I mean, we appear to be strong, but there's a lot of suppressing and numbing down our true feelings because the burden is so heavy to carry that a lot of Black women suffer from burnt out, and yet they cannot stop. They don't know. Usually when a Black woman goes to find out she has something, she's almost to the point of falling down. I know women who work themselves to the point when by the time they reach the doctor, it was so late because they wouldn't stop. They wouldn't stop to feel what's going on in their own bodies, because they are the strength of the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a lot of Black women over the years come up to me and ask me, what's wrong with me because I was with a white woman. Mm-hmm. Like, well, why don't you, because I wasn't broken, I guess, that way. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you're a good Black man. How come you're not with a Black woman? So, well, it just didn't work out that way, Mm-hmm. But so I got persecuted in the dance community. Mm-hmm. By every Black woman that's ever been in the dance community has come up and had that conversation with me, one-on-one, and I understand why, because there's so many of the men are broken, and the women are looking for an equal partner.
But maybe they can't understand each other at this point, because when a woman take that kind of power, well, she have to carry that kind of burden. She almost have to be male-like. Right. A lot of her femininity is suppressed, from my perspective.
Yeah, survival.
So she don't have that luxury of being that feminine, role, and maybe to the males, it may come across not as attractive.
Right.
Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. So we have that to deal with.
Thank you, because I think that's what happened to me. I was afraid of Black women.
Yeah.
They were the ones that I met. They were strong, and they were like, and they weren't that feminine, and it was because they had to survive.
Yeah.
And in a way, being feminine that way was a privilege.
But there's a big part of that because, say, for example, I'm coming from Trinidad. It's like a melting pot, okay? I grew up in an environment where Indians, Chinese, Black, everybody's mixed. Like I have, in my own family background, it's all mixed. And, but you find there are preferences even in those places. People would choose people who are lighter. They're within the family structure itself. If a kid is lighter, there were preferences, and it exists everywhere, So, but the thing is, we have to find back a way to love ourselves, no matter what skin we're in. This is why my first initiation of bringing people back to themselves and loving themselves, whether you find yourself in a light body or a dark body. Remember, light and dark is within each and every one of us. And when we deny one aspect is literally fragmentation of ourselves, because within ourselves we have the structure of light and dark. So when we deny one, we really pushing away within against ourselves. So for me, that's the place to start, is how to love the self. As a Black person, as a white person, be comfortable in your own skin. That's just the costume you come here in, but that's not that's not who we are. We are the light that shines through this costume.
And I wonder, because my lineage mix, the partners that came together, they did come together out of love. And as a mixed race person, okay, I embrace all of the pieces that I am. I always have. I look at that as, I say, well, I have the best of all the worlds.
Exactly.
But I think that's because the mothers that raised me and the women that raised me had a center, and they came from their power, and they did have that privilege. Even, you know, some of them were darker than and some were lighter, but their partner who was all came to love, so they could be female, but they were strong females at the same time. They were, you know, they were in charge. They, you know, they said jump, and the men jumped. But it wasn't a mean. It was just, that's the way it was. I thought that was that's the way it was everywhere.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your wisdom is really helpful. You know, like, you brought a lot to the table.
Well, thank you for putting up with me.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, anyone can leave at any time, but I want to let us go over, because we did start about 20 minutes late, because we were like waiting for Anne and she popped off. So if you have to leave at 8, please do. But whoever wants to stay, you know, please stay. And Jimmy and Anne, when, you know.
And I'd like to hear from, you know, some of the other folks that haven't spoken too.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, like, as a white woman, like, in my own experience, like, and I don't know what it's like to really struggle with survival. I've kind of imposed that upon myself in some ways, you know, living without much money and kind of going to the end of like a paycheck and being like, I don't know how I'm going to get some money to buy my next meal, or living on the streets for a few days without really anything, with a group of people in Detroit to just experience that. But that wasn't a reality. Like, I wasn't homeless, and I knew I have a wealthy family and I could ask for help at any time. But it was at those times that I felt like I was able to, in some ways, do a lot of really deep inner work. But that's because I knew I could. And I found inner resources, and I don't know what it's like to not feel like I don't know if I'll have those inner resources, or if you know, I won't get support anywhere. And I think that's a really different experience. And it's, you know, white people have that experience too, but I think it's a lot less likely. And I think it was super valuable to put myself in those positions to just get a taste of what that might be like. So yeah, so I encourage that, and living simply, like Anne, you've been teaching about that and sharing about that. And I think that's a place we can get to where we can do more of this inner work and find the resources within us and the vibrancy that comes when we're like, oh, I'm just really afraid of my feelings. And if I can turn towards those feelings and face them because I have to, or because I put myself in a position to feel them, whether that's at maybe a meditation retreat or living on the streets for a while, or putting yourself in an uncomfortable position with people you're not used to, or whatever it is. Like, there's always really big learning there. And that's what we do in council too, is hold space for people to share and listen and feel our feelings. So yeah, so thank you so much, Jimmy, for all that you shared, and for Anne to share so honestly, so we can witness your conversation. Felt really deeply valuable.
Does anybody else have anything you want to say?
Jimmy, I'd like to know more about what you're doing with this work with men and women. Just because we need it so much, and I'm curious, like Anne was asking, like what works, what doesn't work.
Well, it's mostly what I learned was, if you give people enough time and create a safe space where they can be their authentic self in front of people and then forget that people are there. The idea is the ultimate version of doing this is 3 days, and it's from sunrise to sunset, and it is about breaking the person down a bit. And we had liquid diet, and when we weren't in council, we did not talk. There's no talking outside of council. And the first day, I sat on the outside and listened to the women all day, from sunrise to sunset. And I learned more in that one day about women's issues than I could, all the books that I could read. And so it's about, with adults, we have so much in, I've done counsel with kids and they go right to it. They're right to it, because they're not thinking about the mortgage, they're not thinking about the bills and all these things. So with adults, you have to wear them down and open them up. And so we did that the first day. The women went and the men. So I didn't get to speak until halfway through the second day, because I wasn't one of the first speakers. And one person speaks at a time, and you go as long as you need to. So the second day, the men were in the middle and the women were outside. And what happened was the men passed through the pain and got to a place of camaraderie and joy a little bit more. So on the third day, which was supposed to be one circle, we made modification, because the facilitator said, this is the plan, but then what happens is also the plan, and we can change it. So they had the women go around again to get into more of a settled space and joy and in their power, which they did, because they were invited to. And then we came back into one circle, and it was really interesting at the end, because there was one person who you could tell at that point who was speaking from their heart and who was speaking from their head. And there was one man in the whole group we cried together to try to get him, please, you've got such an opportunity here, get out of your head and come down to your heart. He took about 45 minutes of just crying. And then he finally spoke. But he had to get out of his own way first, and he needed that time. And so that's the work. What Hillary and I are doing is a shorter version, but I want to find a way to expand it. And the process that Morwen and I had used was, you turn off all electronic devices, all phones, everything. And then in this day and age, what I like to do, and I didn't tell Hillary about this, but I have one staff person I want that would take aside all of the phones in case there was an emergency, and that person would be on for answering the phone and then going. That way, there's no interruption with the council. It's about creating a safe container where people can really feel, and that for adults takes a bit more time. It's a very simple process, actually, and it works. I've seen it work with really different groups. The most powerful time that I saw it work was when we did what we call ceremony of the 4 colors in 5, which is the red, white, black, and yellow, and brown in the middle for mixed. And we had native elders, and we had white elders. Andres from Earth Spirit was there, And one of our goals was we wanted to teach the my native elders that there are white people, pagans in this case, that have very similar culture and tradition. And their culture of pagans and that kind of earth worship was stomped out by the same people that came across the ocean and destroyed the indigenous cultures. And so we wanted to bridge them. We want to say, hey, you know, we have sweat lodge, but there are very light-skinned, blonde-haired people up in Scandinavia, and they do something called sauna. It's really, this is what I'm talking about, it's the same thing. And so we wanted the native elders to hear, and Andres was very eloquent. He spoke a story of a tribal people, and you would think he was talking about a Native American culture until he said it was people from Europe and who they were. And so what happened was I wanted to show my elders that there are white people out there that also come from a tribal culture and a lot of the same tools and same ceremonies of celebrating the earth that you have. And they got it. It was amazing what happened after the council broke up, and the native elders that were there were in council with non-native people for the first time, because they've never done a council. And the other thing about it is the council process that he used is not a native and it's not an African. It's a mix, and it has a little bit of Quaker in it. And what that did is it wasn't us appropriating anybody's culture, and it also wasn't the others that come in from that had to adapt to. Everybody had to adapt to. And the native elders gave us feedback. They said, well, that was different, and it was an improvement in our tradition process, because one of my elders, their process is, as long as you can hold the stick up, you can talk. And I said, well, that means the men can talk longer than the women? I said, that's not fair. And so what we use is this talking stick, and that represents male energy. We use the bowl, and that represents the female. And we use the feather, and that represents the total. And the discipline around the feather is if I'm a guardian or a facilitator of the feather, you holding that feather, and you have to hold it up. Now, it's not that heavy, but you have to hold it up when you're speaking. And if you start doing this feather or this, now you are revealing what's going on inside of you. And as a facilitator, we would stand up and ask the person to just breathe and just hold the feather and come back. So it was a little bit of a discipline, but it was very interesting. My elder said, if you want to really see what's going on inside that person, just watch the point where they're holding the feather, and all is revealed. And wow, that little, he said, watch them with the feather. Don't interrupt them, but just politely get up and have them breathe. And you tell people ahead of time, the tradition is to just hold the feather. And most people, when you first say that, they don't realize, because people will start doing this and because they're nervous and all, but it's a real discipline if you can just sit there and just hold the feather.
Any other questions or responses?
Richie.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Good. Oh, good. Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, great to see you. Great to hear you. Awesome. I'm, I hate that word, privileged to be here. But thank you. Just to really get to know you so more. As always, I've played and some of my best fire drumming experiences were standing next to Morwen playing tunes, both of us hitting at the same time. That was just, oh my God. Just as we say, love and light to you and your path, and it's way not over. So thank you. And one thing I just before I forget, is that I just read something recently, and I want to speak to you what you're talking about, being a mother. And I can only imagine what it's like to not have the man there, especially with boys. And I grew up kind of alone with a brother, and my father wasn't around a lot too. So my mother was the stronger. And just the fear, I'm so humbled and so cherish your reveal and opening up to that in your struggle as a mother. And thank you. I read something recently though, that the major issue is because we as a society, and I hate to say the society, if you correct me if I'm wrong, has incarcerated so many of the men for ridiculous things for centuries as part of the control in a racist society that I'm always amazed at how actually women have held it together for so long and maintained the righteous indignation that every young boy to becoming a man in this society being brutalized with what your sons are facing now. They're young, they're teenagers.
No, they're 20 and 30.
No, not your. I'm talking Ann. I'm talking your sons. How old are they?
My son, I have one that's in his 30s and one that's 17.
Oh yeah, and my God, the 17. My God, I just like the challenges. But both your sons at both ages, yeah. And I, dude, I know Jimmy. I know one of your sons. I hang with them more. So, but where can we and what's the call out to men? That's what I really want to hear. What is the ask to men? I don't care what color we are. What is the ask to the men to help out with all the boys, the young men, and how do we meet this challenge? What can we do?
Be a partner to the women.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm putting this question out to the whole room. It's like, what's the best thing that any man can do? You know, in this tragedy we're facing.
Can I step in a little bit and say
Please,
something?
yes, please. That's to you too.
I feel like men, it doesn't matter what boys, whether it's your own son or it's other people's son, men need to step up and really befriend boys and not creating a whole other problem by crossing boundaries, but being good role models. They see boys struggling. Sometimes you could be working in a school. Sometimes you could be working in a community center. My son, my 17-year-old, he plays hockey, and this is the thing that really, yes, and a black boy playing hockey is not a common thing.
No, I actually just saw a game the other day. It was at a restaurant, and one of the best players was this badass black dude, man, and he was
exactly
awesome.
Maybe it's Cuban, but yeah, he's into hockey and he's going down hardcore because he was a goalie, and then now he's a player. And
he's a goalie.
He was a goalie, and he was taking pucks like crazy. And I was the mom on the stand freaking out. Don't kill my son. Yeah. So, but he has his struggles, you know, like academically it's flat. He doesn't like school at all. But for hockey, he's really like structured, like he gets it, you know. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough. But I think men could meet the boys where the boys are, wherever you are, in whatever. Sometimes situation might just come up right in front of you and you see a black boy or whoever boy misbehaving and he could get himself into trouble. Talk to him. Why not? Not because he's not your son. Talk to him as a father.
Right. Well, you know the other thing that just I'm a businessman, and one thing I think if I took this challenge out to every small business person in the valley and just said, hey, the next time you got a little job to do, find a community or some organization that works with boys or girls, and you know, hey, I need a kid. I mean, I did that when I was 15 or 16.
Yeah.
I was one of those kids that went out and worked some odd job here or there, and I made a little money. But you know what the most important thing is, I learned to value myself. I learned to see the value in myself and what I can offer. And then I was respected by somebody else because they paid me. Because now I had value.
Right.
So,
right.
And so no matter what I did going out there, so, I mean, it's a challenge. I would love to just put out a little ad and just like start a roster of kids that could come work for me here or there, you know, and help around, even people helping around their house or whatever. I think that's important.
Men need to mentor the young boys. In the Earth Spirit community, we have a whole rites of passage process.
Yeah,
that is the glue that holds everything together. Okay. And I've mentored many of the young men there now that are like Donovan Arthur, for instance. I'm like one of his fathers. Okay. I put his first drum in his hands, and he's a monster drummer player now. But not just him, but a lot of us mentor the boys, and sometimes they pick us, and some of the harder ones I've picked them myself, and I've got one boy now that I'm still working with, and he's coming through real disaster, but he's starting to come into his own, and it's taken a long time, and his father was the problem. So now when he needs some advice from a male, he texts me or calls me. He's just started doing this out of the room. So now I hear from him twice a week. Okay, so I've got his attention.
Yeah. That's the point.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I can help him because he'll ask me questions that he couldn't ask his father.
Yeah, because you're safe.
Now, who's going out into the community to find boys or find ways to, like, that's what I wanted to see happen. When I was in school, I tried to get set up. I had a friend who actually taught drumming, African. He was African, and he taught African drumming, and I wanted to get it into the school. And it took so long that by the time they finally said, well, maybe we'll try it, he didn't have the time anymore. He was giving it elsewhere, you know. But because it was primarily a Black school, and they're like, we don't want our kids to go into that realm. They're backwards. So they need people like you who they can respect. I want to make this clear because Jimmy, you weren't here before. Ann knows this, Hillary knows this, but the schools that I taught in were not primarily white administrators or teachers, okay, as well as kids. They were very diverse, about 65% Black American, plus a lot of everything else, but very little white anything. Okay, and it was so hard to get any of that in, and I don't want to speak about the past, and that wasn't here. I mean, that was Houston. Although a model was set up with the right people who they will listen to, because they're not going to listen to me, to set up and show them that this creates real self-valuing and pride for these young men to be able, and girls, and transgenders, to come in and drum. Native drum, real drum, you know, whether it's African or Native American, to drum and to feel that and to understand the rules that go with that in terms of the respect and the listening and the valuing and the passing. Because there's so much in drumming that carries that. Listening carries the voice. Mm-hmm. And we need to bring it back, and not just in little groups like Earth Spirit. It needs to be, and I do believe that it can happen, because I'm looking and seeing how there is, you know, been a movement for meditation in school, and that's spreading actually really well now.
So you find what a common interest, like one of my hobbies is I fly radio controlled aircraft. And so, you know, kids that come out to see me in the field, or they come out with their father, and the father's doing it because he's being the father, but he's not really interested. Okay, I have 3 young boys that are now they're teenagers. I brought them how to be right, be safe, okay, and do it. And now we have a couple of girls, because the other thing is, I'm tired. It's all boys doing this, man. The girls can fly just as good. And we got some 9-year-old girl that flies circles around me, and half the kids there. So it's and I had to work with her father, because her father was the one that was flying, and she would go with him. She was interested, but he did not. It wasn't clued in that she was interested. It wasn't she was just going to just be with daddy at first, but she was going because then I saw him out there last week, and he had a plane that she built from scratch herself, and of course, he set it up and made sure it flew right, and then handed the controls over to her, and she was flying, and I went up to him, and this was the Asian girl and her father, and I was impressed because he had helped mentor her, and he said to me, he said, well, a few years ago we came out here, and you asked her if she wanted to fly. Nobody ever asked her that before, and she said yes. And he said, and I didn't really take her up on it. I thought it was just a fleeting thing, and now she's, so you just got to find that common thread, a hobby or something that interests them. But they're not going to do what we do. We have to engage with something that they're interested in. And I was lucky. It was just something that I do. And then I had a Friday night fly, and I rented a gym out, and the school was great. Oh, you make an activity for the kids. And, I said, well, I want to rent the gym out. I said, no, we'll give you the gym. Because people are looking for things for that their kids are interested in, not just do this because they have a curriculum or somebody who can do it, but you do it because that's what the kids want to do. Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time together today, and I just feel like there was so much shared about really practical experience and ideas of how we can be of service to people that maybe we haven't thought of being service to, and show up and be ourselves. I'm just infinitely grateful to you, Jimmy, for your authenticity and your incredible heart and commitment. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Anne, and thank you
again
for sharing all of that, your experience as well. And thank you to everyone for coming and sharing a little bit with us. And, please do share this post. I'm going to put it on Grace Between Races, and you can share it wherever you'd like to, and put other comments and whatever you want to share on the Facebook page. We would love that, including your own stories.
Before you go, I talked to Shay that I was doing this, and I'm trying to figure out, I invited people. Can be, because one of the things I think you should get her to come on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's amazing, and she's very dark skinned, very dynamic.
Yeah, well, share her contact with me, and we'll be in touch, or talk to her about it. And that would be great.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd love to meet her. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have Mickey, who's a friend of mine, who is actually friends with Sophia, who came on before, Sophia Boyer. And Mickey is an amazing elder woman of color who actually grew up upper class, and does amazing work in electronics and computers, and creating open source software and also works with worker co-ops and starts worker co-ops to train people how to do, you know, share open software, and they're hilarious. Like, and so she has a really unique perspective from where she came from. And something she said to me recently was like, yeah, you know, I was taught to be a general, so I just go around being a general. No one gets in my way, you know? And so she works with like these white guys who are like the head of their companies to teach them how to work with this software, and she has no problem with that. And she's worked all over the place, so she has a very unique perspective, and I'm excited to hear from her. And we might be using a different platform than Zoom if we can get it to work well. So that is totally open source as well. So we'll keep you updated. And yeah, and I'll post information about the event that Jimmy and I are doing May 3rd through 5th, which is the Brothers and Sisters Gender Reconciliation Council with, we're calling it, I'm like, it's a long name, Gender Reconciliation Council Retreat. That's it.
In a really nice place too.
Yeah.
Back at Nance in Stoughton, Mass.
Yeah, beautiful big stone mansion. And I'll be doing some embodiment practices too. So we're not just going to be sitting the whole time. We'll do some movement, and we'll do a little bit of what is it practicing to be, and some drumming maybe, if Jimmy brings his drum.
I won't facilitate. I won't have the energy really.
Yeah. Okay.
That is exhausting just because I've listened to every single word. You know? Yeah.
Well, we'll be doing some movement though, so we can like move that energy and stay in our bodies and stay connected and explore gender through movement and embodiment, and that we all have access to all genders, and specifically are in this dualism of yin and yang and masculine and feminine. And we did a little bit of that in our opening meditation, and so we're really working with this energy of penetration and vagination. And what is that? So if you're curious, please come. And yeah, thank you again to everyone. And I'm going to ring the bowl to thank our ancestors and our guides and our benefactors. May we always remember we can come back to ourselves in connection with all beings. We are awakening together. Blessed be.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.
You too. Be